As we continue in the Joseph story, it's easy to start thinking that this is just the Joseph story without realizing it's the larger part of God's story. What we've seen is that God chose a man and a family through which he was going to bless all the nations. And at times you wonder, what's God thinking? I mean, when you start where we're picking up in Genesis 43, you see Joseph has been removed from his family. You see Jacob dealing with all kinds of dysfunction with multiple wives and showing favoritism towards his sons. And you've got the sons who 22 years ago almost killed their brother and then sent him off into slavery. And you look at the dysfunction and say, this is what God is using to bless all the nations of the world. But through the story, we begin to see God at work. And that's where we continue in Genesis 43. We see in the midst of the desperation of a famine, we see Jacob starting to show a little bit of faith in the midst of all that's going on. We also see the brothers showing repentance. They've admitted their guilt, pointing back to what happened 22 years ago, saying we are guilty. And now we're seeing, as Joseph puts them through a series of tests, we're beginning to see that they are owning their sin and they're responding in ways other than they have in the past. And we're beginning to see them stepping up and just admitting their failure and admitting their sin. And so as we look at this story, it's a story of forgiveness that comes after repentance. It's a story of finding God in very desperate times. And I hope it connects with a lot of you, because I know for so many people we're just going through desperate times, and finding faith in the middle of that is a challenge. And one of the first steps we see is just kind of coming out and being found out, admitting our sin, admitting our weaknesses. And this is a story of finding peace, of finding mercy, and finding forgiveness. So we see the goodness of God at work in this story. And I hope as we make our way through this, that God will begin to open our hearts to own some of the stuff in our life that we don't want anybody to know about. And through that, to start to find peace and mercy and forgiveness. So Genesis 43 is a great study. Look forward to sharing this time with you Sunday morning.